Are you still craving a keto and you're not sure why? Here's what happens. Normally, when you convert from sugar to fat burning, it takes 3 days if your carbs are really, really low. If you do keto and your carbs are a little too high, this 3 days can turn into 5 days, 2 weeks. It could be a long time. So the lower the carb, the faster that you're going to convert into ketosis, fat burning. All right, number 1, your carbs are too high. Now, the range of carbs should be between like 30 grams to 50 grams of carbs per day, not per meal. For some people, 50 grams is actually too much, especially if they had a history of consuming a lot of carbs and they have really bad insulin resistance, or they're pre-diabetic or a diabetic. So if you stick with 30 or less, you'll be pretty good. But the most common reason why you're craving is your carbs are too high. And the 2 big things that you know that you're in ketosis and it's all working is cravings going away and you're no longer hungry. Now, I always recommend doing fasting and keto at the same time, because every time you eat, you trigger insulin to some degree, regardless if that meal is keto friendly. So you're always triggering insulin to some degree when you're eating. So instead of 3 meals, definitely do 2 meals. Now, if your meals are spread out like this, let's say first meal is at 8 a.m. in the morning, breakfast, and you skip the lunch, and then you eat at 8 at night, that gives you a 12-hour fasting window. It's just not going to be long enough. I mean, it's better than 3 meals, but I would prefer if you took this meal right here and you pushed it closer to this meal so we can bring this down so we have a longer period of fasting. And so as far as quantity of food, that's less important than frequency of meals. So if you took 2,000 calories of food for a given day and you broke it up into small little meals compared to having all 2,000 in 1 meal, or maybe break it up into 2 meals, but they're very close together, so you have a longer period of fasting, you'll be much better off if you condense the foods and reduce the frequency of eating than to spread it out over the entire day. Number 3, snacking in between meals. This is slightly different. Some people think that, oh, I'm just having a little bit of this, it's keto friendly, just a little bit of food, right? They might do a little keto friendly cookie between meals to tide them over. That defeats the whole purpose of fasting. It's going to break your fast. And guess what? It's going to raise insulin a little bit. What you need to understand is eating makes you hungry. Now, it sounds kind of stupid, but every time you eat, especially a small little thing, which is not going to be very satisfying, in about 1.5 hours, you're going to be hungry. And so don't snack between meals. Take those so-called keto snacks and consume them right at the meal or right after the meal as a dessert. Number 4, too much protein. More than 8 ounces of protein for an average person is a little too much. So anything more than that tends to turn into glucose, or it is wasted in the urine. And so what people don't realize is that protein by itself is not used for fuel, but it can be broken down into glucose if you're having too much, and then that could be used as fuel. So if you're eating this 16-ounce steak at a restaurant, the next morning you're going to be really hungry. All right, number 6, eating too late at night. This just kind of throws off this whole fasting cycle. So if you eat late at night, you may notice the next morning that you're craving certain things. So it's really good if you could just eat that last meal 6, 7 o'clock and then not eat anything after that. That's the ideal situation. You'll find that you'll do very well, because then you have a period of fasting, then you go to bed, you're fasting all night, and you should not be hungry in the morning. If you are hungry in the morning, chances are your carbs are too high for that last meal. All right, number 6, eating too much food. During a holiday or something, or Thanksgiving, you eat this massive meal where you're completely stuffed. Even if it is keto friendly, you're going to be hungry the next day, simply because it's going to create a lot of stress on the digestive system, and a lot of those extra calories will be turning into glucose, simply because it's too much to actually assimilate and use as energy. And one point about 6, the question is, how much food do I eat? Well, it's going to have to be an individual thing based on your individual sweet spot. So you want to have enough so you're not completely stuffed for many, many hours. Like the next meal, you're not even hungry at all. You can just keep going because you jam so much food in there, it's just overwhelming the system, versus just the meal is just too small, just not enough to sustain you, especially since you need a certain amount of foods to satisfy your nutrient requirements. And you can figure this out just by trying certain amounts over 2 days, and then you'll know, okay, I need this amount of protein, this amount of carbs, this amount of fat. All right, number 7, stress. Stress will release glucose. Stress will increase cortisol, which will then release glucose, and that's going to throw off your blood sugars. So that's another hidden factor. Number 8, a lack of sleep. If you ever notice those days that you haven't slept, you're craving certain things that you shouldn't be eating. So this is really stressful on the blood sugar system because it increases cortisol. All right, number 9, keto desserts. I think they have their place. I think they're okay for some people. I think they're good in the beginning, but ideally it's not good down the road to do too many keto desserts, especially because it's not really coming from an actual like steak or a salad. It's like a concentrated almond flour, which is not really natural, or you're doing certain amounts of oils in combination with sugar alcohols, which create a lot of digestive issue. So I suggest not on a regular basis, but periodically go ahead and do it for holidays, or if they don't bother you, go ahead. But I will say that too many keto desserts, especially with the sugar alcohol, can create hunger, because certain sugar alcohols are not completely zero on the glycemic index. Some are a little bit higher, like xylitol, for example. So for me, I do one little packet. It's just a tiny bit in my coffee in the morning, and that's it for the whole day. And my coffee is like, literally, it's like just a small little thing. It's strong, but I don't do a lot of xylitol. The other thing I want to point out is that when you do a lot of almond flour, it's high in oxalates. So you may find that it could increase your risk of kidney stones if you're prone to that, or it can also irritate your joints, and you can feel like you're getting like arthritis from that. I'm just saying that not as something that's common, but it can happen. All right, last thing is hidden sugars. For this one, it could be a lot of different things. Number 1, yogurt, for example, is very high in sugar. And I'm even talking about the plain yogurt. Kefir has sometimes too much sugar for certain people, and that's just enough to bump them out of ketosis. You also have so-called keto-friendly foods that are not keto-friendly. So read the ingredients, observe what's in there. Certain companies put maltodextrin, they put dextrose, they actually put sugar, they put wheat, tapioca, and they're telling you they're keto-friendly, but they're really not. And I had one person who actually was consuming Gatorade, for example, and they thought that was sugar-free, and it really wasn't. Or they might do something like coconut water, which has quite a bit of sugar. Or they might not understand that honey is very similar to sugar, or agave nectar is like even worse than sugars. All right, so these are kind of all the reasons why you might be craving a keto to look at to see what you need to change.